Hey, it's Ashlee from Smart Edition Academy. We are going to talk about conversions today. So if you struggle with converting between units, especially metric units, we'll talk about a whole bunch of different examples and things that you need to know for your entrance exam. So if that's something that you need practice with, you are in the right place today. So I'm Ashlee. Just a little bit about me. I am a math teacher with over 10 years of experience. I've been teaching and privately tutoring students of all ages for a long time now. And I'm just really excited to be here and to help support you on your journey into passing this entrance exam. So what are we going to cover today? Well, we are going to talk about what conversions you need to know for your entrance exam. Many of these will need to be memorized. So we will talk about that. Any tips and tricks I have for you to memorize those conversions. Specifically, okay, a lot of what we're going to be doing is the metric system. So I'm going to talk to you about some ways that I can help convert within the metric system. Okay, so we're going to look at a few different strategies for converting within the metric system. And then, of course, what will the problems look like? We will do a bunch of practice problems together today. As a math teacher, I believe that the best way to learn and understand math is to do math, okay? You can absolutely be watching videos, going through practice tests, doing the lessons, but unless you are actually actively doing the math, it doesn't really get internalized. So we are going to practice those together today. Okay, so before we get started, I would love if you had a piece of paper, something to write with, a four-function calculator, because on your exam you will be allowed to use a four-function calculator. So have that handy so we can use that whenever possible. So have your paper, have your pen or pencil, have your calculator ready, and we are going to jump into it. So this, there's a couple, I'm going to scroll down so you can see the rest of the slide in a moment, but there are a few metric conversions that you need to know specifically for nurses. This is just the metric table for nurses that you need to memorize. So this is, we'll look at more in a minute, but this is kind of the concise version of some of the most important conversions that you need to know. So take out your phone, take a screenshot on your computer, and, you know, a great way to practice conversions would be to make flashcards or something like that in order to just practice these over and over and over again so they come pretty naturally. So 1,000 micrograms is 1 milligram, 1,000 milligrams is 1 gram, 1,000 grams is 1 kilogram, and then 2.2 pounds is equal to 1 kilogram as well. So that is for mass, okay? We also have volume. Okay, so there's a few more down here of other conversions you really need to know. 30 milliliters is equal to 1 ounce. 1 milliliter is equal to 1 cubic centimeter, or 1 cc. 1 teaspoon is equal to 5 milliliters. 1,000 milliliters is equal to 1 liter. And some of these, again, if they're metric conversions like milliliter to liter, I'm going to show you a strategy to help memorize some of these a little bit better, or, you know, figure them out as you go. 3 teaspoons is equal to 1 tablespoon. 1 tablespoon is equal to 15 milliliters. And 2 tablespoons is equal to 1 ounce. Okay, so all of those are important conversions to know. Again, take a picture, take a screenshot so you have it handy for later. And then let's talk specifically about converting within the metric system first. So many of you may have, from like a table like this or other resources, all of the different conversions you need to know. When we are talking about converting within the metric system, this is just a little trick, a mnemonic that I like to use to help those of us who struggle with some of that memorization and just want another strategy that they can pull out, especially if you have some like test taking anxiety, or, you know, you get a little bit like stressed or flustered under those circumstances. Pulling out a mnemonic like this, something a little bit silly that's easy to remember, can help you if you get stuck or you kind of like blank on a question like this. So converting within the metric system is very important. So this is just another strategy to help. So what this stands for is the mnemonic, King Henry died while drinking chocolate milk. So you see the picture down there. That's what that goofy little picture is representing. King Henry died while drinking chocolate milk. So why those letters? Well, if you notice, these are the prefixes for all of your metric units. So when I'm talking about metric units, in this case, I'm specifically talking about like liters, meters, grams. Okay, so we can use that for all of these because we have our prefixes that go in front. We have kilo, hecto, deca. W stands for the whole unit, so that would be all of these units. If we're just converting between a unit and the whole unit, that's where the W comes in. This D is deci, centi, and then milli, okay? So how do I use this? Well, this mnemonic allows me to move the decimal place of a number. So let's say, for example, I just wanted to take, I don't know, let's just do like 5.2 liters, and I want to turn it into milliliters. Okay, so what I do with this mnemonic, because I can just write this down on my paper really quick. King Henry died while drinking chocolate milk. Okay, let me write down those letters. I'm starting at my whole unit, okay, and I'm converting to milliliters. So what I do is I figure out how many jumps it takes to get there. So notice how I'm going 3 times to the right. The direction you go is really important. So this is telling me to move my decimal place 1, 2, 3 swoops to the right. So if I take my decimal place 1, 2, 3 swoops to the right, this would give me 5,200. Okay, and if you already know the conversion, this checks out because you would just be multiplying by 1,000. Okay, if I had to go in the opposite direction, okay, like milliliters to my whole units, notice how I'm moving my decimal to the left. Okay, 1, 2, 3. So then I could just go in the opposite direction here, 1, 2, 3, to get back to 5.2 liters. And that's when we're dividing. So sometimes I know from my experience, students get a little stuck. Do I divide or multiply? This takes that question out of it for you. It just tells you which direction to move the decimal. So let's try a bunch of examples here with these metric conversions. I'm going to show you how to use this mnemonic, but if you have all of these conversions already memorized, then just use the strategy that works best for you. So 350 milliliters to liters. I'm going from milliliters to liters. So I have to go 1, 2, 3 times to the left. So where is the decimal here? Whenever you have a whole number, it's always right at the end. So let's swoop it 1, 2, 3 times to the left. Okay, notice how I need to add that 0 in front. Okay, because if not, the decimal place will get kind of lost. So you have a 0 in front, and then I actually get to drop the 0, that trailing 0 at the end. It doesn't change the number, and it, if anything, it makes it confusing to leave it there. So we get to just drop that trailing 0. So this is the same thing as 35 hundredths. Okay, let's try another one. I have 1.6 liters. I want to go to centiliters. So I'm going from liters to centiliters. 1, 2 to the right. 1, 2 to the right would leave me with 160 centiliters. Okay, 27.3 decigrams to grams. I'm just swooping once to the left. Once to the left would give me 2.73. Okay, so let's scroll down. I've got a few more examples for you here. I'm just going to rewrite my mnemonic really quick. King Henry died while drinking chocolate milk. It takes me 5 seconds to write it down, and now I have a resource to use. So grams to milligrams, 1, 2, 3 to the right. 1, 2, 3 to the right. So this would be 3, 0, 0, 5, 6. Notice I have to fill here. The empty space gets a 0, a placeholder, and that would be 300,560 milligrams. Okay, let's go from centimeters to kilometers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the left. So I'm going to have to fill in 1, 2, 3, 4 placeholders after my decimal. So I'm going to put the 0 first, right? Always put that in before your decimal if there's no number in front of it. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 6, 0, 2. Okay, so long, really a small decimal, but that's okay. If we just use this conversion strategy, we will get the correct answer. Okay, and lastly, meters to millimeters, 1, 2, 3 to the right, 1, 2, 3 to the right gives me 186,000. Let me just make that a little bit clearer. 186,000. Okay, so here's a strategy that we can use throughout the rest of this practice. And, as you are studying in general, if this is something that resonates with you and you feel like it is helpful, use it. If you feel like it's unnecessary and doesn't really make sense to you, then that's okay. But do you have another strategy that works? Okay, can you just memorize those conversions and be successful? So if the answer is yes, then do it. And if not, you may want to just revisit this sometime and just see if this can be helpful for your metric units. Because again, it's really, really important that you can do this easily, comfortably, accurately for your exam. Okay, so let's just do a couple examples that would come straight from your Smart Addition practice test. So 67 millimeters to centimeters. So if you know the conversion from millimeters to centimeters right away, do it. I'm going to use my mnemonic. I'm going from millimeters to centimeters. All I have to do is go once to the left. Okay, once to the left should give me 6.7 centimeters. Okay, 6.7 centimeters. Okay, this is also just the same as dividing by 10. So if you knew you just had to divide by 10, you should have got the same answer. Okay, I'll let you guys try this one. Feel free to drop your answer in the chat. You can either write the number or just, maybe we'll just label these if this is easier, A, B, C, and D. I'll give you a moment and then I will check in with the answer. 7.5 liters to milliliters. So a lot of us may have this already memorized. You could totally use the mnemonic, or you could just multiply by 1,000, and you should get 7,500 milliliters, which is answer number C. Answer letter C. Okay. 84 grams to centigrams. So maybe you know the mnemonic, maybe you don't, maybe you know the conversion. What do you know best? King Henry died while drinking chocolate milk. So I'm going to go from grams to centigrams. So twice to the right. 2. This is the same thing as multiplying by 100. So maybe you knew that already. Either way, you should get 8,400 centigrams. Okay, so a lot of these are pretty straightforward. We will totally look at some word problems in a bit, but I just want to get the practice in because, again, the way that we can internalize and understand math is to do the math. So we're going to do a lot of practice. It may feel a little repetitive, but hopefully by the end of the lesson, you feel much more confident. So meters to kilometers. King Henry died while drinking chocolate milk. So if I'm going from meters to kilometers, okay, I'm swooping 3 times to the left. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to have to add a placeholder in there. So 0.099 kilometers. Okay, let's go from decimeters to meters. Looks like we have to swoop once to the left. So that would be 438.8 meters. Okay, same thing as dividing by 10. Okay, why don't you guys try this one? This is a pretty long conversion. Maybe not one we necessarily have memorized, but can you figure it out or can you use the mnemonic? I'll give you a quick little head start and then I'll check in with the answer. So feel free to drop it in the chat. Okay, so we need to go from kiloliters to milliliters. So let's see what's happening. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times I'm swooping this to the right. I'm just going to rewrite this to see what happens. So if I take my decimal, swoop it 6 times to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is where my decimal will end. Notice I have all these placeholders to fill in, so it's a little bit easier sometimes if you just rewrite it. And then this looks like 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros at the end will give me 500,000 milliliters. Okay, so hopefully you guys are feeling a little bit better about conversions here. Let's talk about some word problems. Okay, so a few examples of word problems that you should expect to see and need to know how to solve to be successful in your NSHITS exam. A patient receives 1,200 milliliters of fluid every 4 hours over the course of 24 hours. How much total fluid does the patient receive in one day? So just a couple tips about word problems. You really want to do close reading. Make sure you understand the information they're giving you and the question that they're asking you. So I like to just do some little notations. I'll underline or circle important information. So what I see so far is that they're receiving 1,200 milliliters of fluid every 4 hours for 24 hours. Okay, so the question is, how much total fluid do they get in one day? So the first thing that I notice is they're asking about one day, okay, and over here it says 24 hours. That's the same thing. So if they're getting 1,200 milliliters of fluid every 4 hours, how often, or not how often, but how many times are they going to get the fluid in the course of 24 hours? Well, I have to take my 24 hours, which is the same thing as one day, divide it by 4, okay, and this means that they will get it will get it 6 times. They will get the fluid 6 times over the course of that one day. So I'm going to take my 1,200 milliliters in each, that they're getting it each time, and multiply it by 6. So this would be a great time to pull out your calculator and let it do the hard work for you. 1,200 times 6, if you plug that in, you should get 7,200 milliliters. Okay, and I notice that all of my answers are in milliliters, which is nice. I don't have to do any conversions there. I'm just figuring out what the question is asking me. However, I do want to just practice this because they very well could have said, how many liters of fluid are they getting? So if we had gotten this as our answer, we could very easily figure out how much this is in liters by using our mnemonic, or in this case, you can also just divide by 1,000. And this is the same thing as 7.2 liters. Notice how I dropped those trailing zeros. It's very possible that they could ask you to convert on questions like this at the end. So we'll probably see something like that as we go through this, but that is just something I wanted to note, that as long as you know what the question is asking, you can get the answer, but you do have to be readily able to convert if necessary. Okay, let's see what's next. A doctor writes a prescription for 0.5 liters of liquid medicine to a patient. How many milliliters would the medicine bottle be filled with? So let's see what we're given. We're given 0.5 liters of liquid medicine, and we want to know how many milliliters it's going to be filled with. So this question is essentially just asking you to take 0.5 liters and convert it to milliliters. Okay, so go ahead and drop in the chat what you think the answer is. You could just put A, B, C, and D if that's easier for you. You can use the mnemonic, King Henry died while drinking chocolate milk, or you can just use the conversion. If we are going from liters to milliliters, we can either think about this as swooping 3 times to the right, 3, which would be 500. Or this is the same thing. If I just know my conversion, I know I have to multiply by 1,000. Either way, you should get 500, which was answer option A. Okay, let's try another one. We've got quite a few of these to do. So let's see what else we might be expected of. A doctor writes a prescription for a total of 20 grams of medicine. If a pharmacist fills the order using tablets that are 200 milligrams of medicine each, how many tablets will be needed for the prescription? So They tell us we have a total of 20 grams, and they fill the order using tablets that are 200 milligrams each. How many tablets will be needed? So essentially what we have to do here, and we need to figure out how to solve the problem. We have 20 grams total, and we're dividing it by 200 milligram tablets to figure out how many total tablets we'll need. The problem here is that I have different units. I can't divide grams by milligrams without converting, okay? So we can choose to go from grams to milligrams or milligrams to grams. It does not matter, okay? But you do need the same unit. So I'm just going to choose to turn my 20 grams into milligrams, okay? So this is multiplying by 1,000. I'm actually going to need a little more space to write this. This would be 20,000 milligrams. So instead of 20 grams, I can just write this as 20,000 milligrams divided by 200 milligrams. Okay, and when I divide that, I get 100. So that means that we would need 100 tablets in order to fill the prescription. Okay, so still need those strategies for word problems to figure out, what is being asked of us and how can we use math to solve those questions. But then this also throws in the conversions for us as well. Okay, a nurse provides 0.25 liters of fluid to a recovering patient every 4 hours. The doctor wants to restrict the fluid intake and says to stop it after 1,500 milliliters. And then the doctor will check on the patient. How many times will the patient receive fluid before the doctor checks on him? So for me, this word problems like this just feel like they're like kind of wordy. It's a lot of information. I'm going to go through, do my close reading, figure out what they're asking me. So 0.25 liters of fluid every 4 hours. The doctor wants to restrict the fluid intake and stop it after we get to 1,500 milliliters. How many times will they receive fluid? So we have 0.25 liters of fluid that we want to give to a patient until they get to 1,500 milliliters. The 4 hours is actually kind of irrelevant here. So this is kind of like just extra information they threw at you we don't really need. So essentially what I'm doing is taking my total and dividing by how much we are getting in each time the nurse provides fluid. So notice how this is milliliters and this is liters. This is not the same unit, so I need to convert. So I can convert from milliliters to liters, liters to milliliters, it doesn't matter. Okay, maybe let's convert milliliters this time. So 1,500 milliliters is equal to how many liters? Well, I can either swoop 3 times to the left or divide by 1,000 this time. So you get 1.5 liters. So really what I'm doing, I'm going to change this to liters, 1.5 divided by 0.25. Okay, and when I divide that, I get 6. So this means that the patient will receive fluid 6 times. Okay. Another question that I could see them asking from something like this would not just be how many times are they receiving fluid, but how long would it take to reach that total intake of 1,500? So that's when the 4 hours may come in handy, because if it takes 6 times and every 4 hours they're coming, that would take 24 hours to receive all the fluid. So that could be another question that I could see them asking that would add another just like layer of thought to a question like this. Okay, let me give you one to try on your own. Okay, take a second to, let me just go back a little so you can see better. Take a second to read through this, figure out what the question is asking you, and then feel free to drop either the number or if you want to just do the letter A, B, C, or D in the chat. And I will give you like a 20-second head start, and then I will read it and jump into the solution. Okay, so it says a nurse needs to administer 0.8 grams of medicine to a patient every 2 hours until the patient has received 3,200 milligrams worth of medicine. If the nurse is prompt on her care, how many times will the nurse give the patient medicine? So we need to administer 0.8 grams of medicine every 2 hours until they have received 3,200 milligrams. Okay, so just by looking at this, okay, ones in grams, ones in milligrams, to figure out like which one is the total here, this is the total until they've received that much, okay? If the nurse is prompt on their care, how many times will they give the patient medicine? So again, this is one of those questions where the hours that it takes to do it is actually irrelevant. It doesn't matter. So I need to take my total 3,200 milligrams and divide it by 0.8 grams. So let's convert our grams to milligrams by multiplying by 1,000. So this is 800 milligrams. So if I take 3,200 divided by 800, okay, this will give me 4. So again, you could just plug that right in your calculator, let that do the hard work for you. You would get 4 as your solution. A nurse needs to administer 0.5 grams of medicine to a patient every hour until the patient has received 2,500 milligrams worth of medicine. If the nurse is prompt on her care, how many times will the nurse give the patient medicine? Okay, so a lot of these questions have a similar pattern. Okay, you don't want to get caught up in that because they can change it on you at any second, but just noticing kind of the process of what we're doing a lot of the times. We're taking the dosage, right? There's the total. And the question is, how many times will they give the patient medicine? Just thinking about the process here will be pretty similar for a lot of these questions. So the total is 2,500. We're going to divide that in milligrams, divide that by each dose, 0.5 grams, to find how many times the nurse will give the patient medicine. I need to convert to have the same units. I don't have the same units. So what I might do here, let's change the 0.5 grams to milligrams. Okay, 0.5 grams is equal to, we need to multiply it by 1,000. This is the same thing as 500 milligrams. So I like to get rid of the decimals when I can, just because they're easy to like lose in your math when you're trying to solve things. So that's why I'm converting in this way to use the bigger numbers, but it really doesn't matter. You could have converted the milligrams to grams and had 2.5 grams divided by 0.5 grams as well. That would get you the same answer, which should be 5. Cool. All right, so I've got one more question, which is a little bit different for us here. I've seen these pop up in a few of the practice tests, so I just want to make sure that you're aware of this conversion, and I want to just write it out for you and make sure you know how to use it. So an allergist prescribes their patient to take 550 milligrams of antihistamine medicine per dose. When the patient picks up the medicine at the pharmacy, it is only available in liquid form. So remember, milligrams, that's like a mass unit. So that would be if we were talking about like tablets or pills. But what happens if it's only available in liquid form? We're talking about volume. So this is why the question says, how many milliliters should the patient be taking per dose? So we have not seen a conversion between milligrams and milliliters because they're different. Not only just the prefix, but the actual unit is different. We're talking about mass versus volume. So this is a conversion you need to know. I would absolutely write this down. So 1,000 milligrams is equal to 1 milliliter. So write this down. This is the conversion that we can use unless they give us another one. Unless they give us something to use specifically, this is the one we can assume we are allowed to use. 1,000 milligrams is equal to 1 milliliter. So now we just use that conversion to go from milligrams to milliliters. So 550 milligrams is equal to how many milliliters? Well, thinking about this, notice how I'm going from milligrams to milliliters. It's getting smaller, 1,000 to 1. I'm dividing by 1,000. So that is how I'm going to answer this question. I'm just going to take this and divide by 1,000. So 550 divided by 1,000, plugging that in your calculator, you get 0.55 milliliters. It should drop that trailing zero for you, but if not, just make sure you do. So you can get your solution of 0.55 milliliters. Okay, so again, important conversion. Take a moment, write it down, take a screenshot. Just one we haven't seen yet. It doesn't come up as often as the other conversions, but you very well may need to have this, and will definitely need this going forward in your career. So just have that handy. Okay, so we spent a lot of time so far talking about metric units and metric conversion strategies we can use for that, as well as looking at a bunch of word problems. So we also need to talk about other conversions that are not just the metric system that we do need to memorize. So here I have other conversions for you to memorize, a great slide for you to take a screenshot or take a picture of. So let me scroll down. We've got volume, weight, and then I'll come down to distance after. So take a moment, take a quick screenshot or photo. I'll talk about each of these, and then I'll arrow down so you can see the rest. So some of these are a little repetitive. You have seen these when we were talking about metric conversions, but other ones are not. We are going from our imperial units to our metric units. So not as easy to convert. Really, you just have to memorize them. Flashcards is a great way to do that. So maybe make that something you add to your to-do list to make flashcards for your conversions if you don't have these memorized. Okay, so let's look at volume first. 1 cc is 1 milliliter. 30 milliliters is 1 ounce. 1,000 milliliters is 1 liter. We've seen all of those on the previous slides, but here's some new ones. 8 ounces is equal to 1 cup. 2 cups is equal to 1 pint. 2 pints is equal to 1 quart. And then 4 quarts is equal to 1 gallon. Okay, so those are all conversions, again, that you need to memorize. You will not be given them. You need to have them ready to go. When we were talking about weight or mass, 1,000 milligrams is equal to 1 gram. 16 ounces is equal to 1 pound. 100 centigrams is equal to 1 gram. And then we have 2.2 pounds is equal to 1 kilogram. 1,000 grams is 1 kilogram. 2,000 pounds is 1 ton. And then an approximate conversion you can use is that 1,000 kilograms is equal to 1 ton. Okay, so let's look at our distance as well. Distance, we have 10 millimeters is equal to 1 centimeter. 12 inches is equal to 1 foot. 2.54 centimeters is equal to 1 inch. So that's the conversion you'll use to go from centimeters to inches or vice versa. 3 feet is equal to 1 yard. 100 centimeters is equal to 1 meter. And then we've got 5,280 feet is equal to 1,760 yards, which you could just figure out by dividing by 3 because we already know that 3 feet is equal to 1 yard. And then also each of those is equal to 1 mile. And then 1,000 meters is equal to 1 kilometer. Okay, so again, just things you need to memorize. Come up with, strategy like using flashcards. Make up a silly mnemonic to help you. Like one that I've used before is going from feet to miles. I always had trouble remembering there was 5,280 feet in a mile. So I think about 5 tomatoes when I have to go from feet to miles. 5,280. Okay, that's how many feet are in a mile. And then you could easily just divide this by 3 to get the yards. So that's just something that I found to be helpful. You can totally look online, YouTube, TikTok. They have a bunch of different silly mnemonics, like how do I memorize centimeters to inches? And somebody's probably thought of a way to do that. So again, just make sure you're taking a screenshot or picture of this. We are going to use a lot of these conversions in some examples over the next 10 plus minutes here before we then talk about temperature. Okay, so let's do some of these examples. I need to go from 22 inches to feet. So I'm going to just write the conversion I need and then figure out how to use it. So I know that there are 12 inches in 1 foot. So what I'm doing here is I'm dividing by 12. So 22 divided by 12. If you plug that in your calculator, you are going to get a decimal, okay, which is fine, but if we want an exact number, when I do 22 divided by 12, notice how you get 1.83 repeating, which is an answer, okay? We totally could leave it like that. More often than not, though, if it doesn't work out nicely to be a nice, like, terminating decimal, you probably will have to use a fraction to represent it. So if I were doing 22 divided by 12 and wanted to simplify the fraction, then it would look something like, let's see, this would go into 1 with 10 left over, and then I would just simplify this 1 and 5/6. So I just did that pretty quickly. So in this case, we're just talking about conversions. You do still need to be comfortable with fractions and decimals when we're talking about conversion. So just keep that in mind. Maybe make a little note. You want to go back and watch some videos on fractions if that didn't make sense to you. Okay. Let's go from gallons to pints. Okay. So 6.5 gallons equals how many pints? Well, I didn't have a conversion to go straight from gallons to pints, but I did have a couple conversions that could be helpful. I know that 1 gallon is equal to 4 quarts. Okay? And I also know that 1 quart is equal to 2 pints. So I could do both of those conversions and go from gallons to quarts first. So multiplying by 4, 6.5 times 4 would give me 26 quarts. Okay, and then if I want to go from quarts to pints, then I'm just going to have to multiply by 2, and I would get 52 pints. So the answer will be 52. Is there a quicker way to do this? Well, if you think about this, and actually let me just write this down, we had to do 6.5 times 4. So we multiplied by 4, and then we multiplied by 2. You could also just multiply by 8. So if you want to add this in as well, 1 gallon is equal to 8 pints. That's a conversion that we could figure out based off of the 2 that we already know. But if that's just something else you want to memorize, then go ahead and add that in there. So we could have just multiplied by 8 to begin with. All right, let's take 30 pounds and turn it into ounces. Well, I know that 1 pound is equal to 16 ounces. So I'm going to multiply by 16. Okay, so 30 times 16 would give me 480 ounces. Okay, so just again, using the conversions that I have memorized and knowing how to apply them to get my solution. All right, and then just a little bonus conversion here. You will see it probably come up a little bit. Not the, obviously most important topic here, but something we do need to know how to convert is how to go from a 12-hour clock, which is what a lot of us probably use, to military time or to that 24-hour clock. So 10:22 a.m. in military time. Because it is a.m., all right, it is after midnight and before noon, then all we do is we just drop that little colon there, and this is the same thing as 10:22, okay? But what would happen if I had 10:22 p.m.? p.m. is afternoon, okay? So after that 12 o'clock point, that's when we have to start adding 12 to our time, because this is 10:22 at night. So we have to add 12, so this would be 22:22. Okay, so converting to military time is definitely something that you need to know and can possibly come up. So just want to feel comfortable with that. All right, let's try some questions right from our Smart Edition practice tests. So let's convert 16 kilograms to pounds. So what I need is the conversion. 1 kilogram is equal to 2.2 pounds. So to go from kilograms to pounds, I am multiplying by 2.2. Okay, right? 1 times 2.2 would get me to 2. So 16 times 2.2 should give me 20, nope, not 25, sorry. 35.2 pounds. Okay, so as a as a math teacher, what I find really helpful for my students and for me specifically is to write the conversion down every time. It's great to have them memorized. Sometimes things get a little jumbled. Numbers can get a little jumbled in my head. So if I write it down, I just know it like looks right. That can be really helpful. So you'll notice I'm just like writing down the conversion every time. And it's also great for you because the more exposure you have, the easier it is to memorize. Okay, let's go from gallons to milliliters. Okay, so how do I go from gallons to milliliters? There are a few different things we might use. So let's go back and let's just keep in the back of our head, we need to go from gallons to milliliters. Let's look at our sheet here. So gallons to milliliters. Okay, so I have gallons to quarts, I have quarts to pints, pints to cups, cups to ounces, ounces to milliliters. I would have to know all of those in order to use the conversions, just to get right to the answer in that way. So let's do it this way and then see if there was a quicker one we could have used. Okay, so to go from gallons to milliliters. 2 gallons. Okay, what we have to do is multiply by 4 because there's 4 quarts in 1 gallon. So I'm just going to write this in kind of a different way. I'll show you why I'm doing this way. And then I'm going to go to pints. Okay, so there are 2 pints in 1 quart. Okay, so now I'm going from pints to cups. So there are 2 cups in 1 pint. Now I'm going, oops, I should have written a multiplication symbol here. So I'm multiplying every time with these conversions. Okay, now I want to go from cups to ounces. So I'm going 8 ounces in 1 cup. And the last thing I want to do is go from ounces to milliliters. So there's 30 milliliters. Oops, I don't know why I keep doing that. Sorry. 30 milliliters, running out of room a little bit, over 1 ounce. Okay. So basically what happens here is that I can cancel out all of these units. And then ounces, there was ounces down here, would it cancel out? And just be left with milliliters, which is what I want. So essentially, writing out all of these conversions, I could do 2 times 4 times 2 times 2 times 8 times 30 to go from gallons to milliliters. So let's just take out our calculator and try that real quick. 2 times 4 times 2 times 2 times 8 and then times 30. Okay, go ahead. I'll give you a second to just plug that in your calculator. That's a lot. Two times 4 times 2 times 2 times 8 times 30. Okay, cool. So I'm getting 2 times 2 times 7,680, which is a little bit off. So they may have made an assumption of using a different metric unit, which is totally fine. But we can choose the one that is closest. So this one is definitely the closest. Okay, so what unit what conversion they're using here, so we can write this down and maybe this is something we can add to memorize, is that 1 gallon is equal to 3,790 milliliters. Okay, so this may be a conversion you want to add. Don't know how often it comes up. If you had all these other ones memorized, you could totally do it and then just use process of elimination to make the best choice based off what you were given. But this is just another conversion that if you had it memorized, it would have made this question a lot easier. Do I know if that will come up often? No, but again, just, another resource just in case. But essentially what I did up here was write out all of my conversions so that all I was left with was the milliliters at the top, which is what I wanted to end with. So I just basically found a conversion, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 conversions actually, that would allow me to end to milliliters starting with gallons. Ooh, okay, that was fun. Let's try another one, a little more straightforward. Let's go from inches to centimeters, okay? So our unit here is that 1 inch is equal to 2.54 centimeters. So what I'm doing to go from inches to centimeters is just multiplying by 2.54. So if I take my 12 inches, multiply it, when I plug that in my calculator, I get 30.48 centimeters. Cool. All right, let's convert from gallons to pints. So we just did one of these conversions before. If you remember how to go straight from gallons to pints, 1 gallon equals how many pints? Feel free to use that conversion. If you don't remember, the 2 conversions that we had on our chart that we should be memorizing is that 1 gallon equals 4 quarts and 1 quart is equal to 2 pints. So you can use those as well. So take a moment and just drop your answer in the chat when you think you've got it. Okay, so the conversion to go straight from gallons to pints would be 1 gallon equals 8 pints. So you could just multiply by 8. So you should have got 64. Or you could have just multiplied by 4 to get quarts and then take the quarts and multiply by 2 to get pints. Okay, either way works. All right, let's go from inches to feet. So remember when we did inches to feet earlier? We did do it to find the decimal answer. The decimal answer wasn't very simple. It had a long repeating decimal, so we turned it into a fraction. In this one, it's nice to look at the answers before we try to solve it, just to get an idea. All of these are decimals, so all I have to do is use my conversion, and my calculator should be able to help me here. So 12 inches is equal to 1 foot. So if I'm going from inches to foot, I am dividing by 12. Okay, so I like to write the conversion too because then I'm really clear, am I multiplying or dividing? So 27 divided by 12. Go ahead and plug that in your calculator. And you should get 2.25 feet. So 2.25 feet would be your solution. Cool. All right, so we just did a bunch of other conversions that you need to know. Again, that chart that I gave you before we started these is really important just to know what do I need to memorize and, strategies in order to study for that, such as using flashcards, finding mnemonics to help you. Those sort of things can be really helpful. Okay, so just maybe add that on your to-do list of, things you want to do as you are studying for the entrance exam going forward. Because if you have them memorized, these questions will feel easy. If you don't have them memorized, they will feel hard. So we want questions to feel easy whenever possible. So the last thing we're going to talk about today is just some temperature conversions. So we need to know these 2 formulas. Again, you need to memorize them. It just is what it is. Technically, if you remember one of them, you can find from Celsius to Fahrenheit or Fahrenheit to Celsius. That is definitely possible. If you remember both of them, it's going to be a lot more straightforward to do so. So I'm just going to make the assumption that we have both of these memorized, okay, as I am solving the last few examples for today. So to convert from Celsius to Fahrenheit, we've got our formula here. Fahrenheit is equal to 9/5 times the Celsius temperature plus 32. So we will do some examples, show you how to plug into these formulas. If we are converting from Fahrenheit to Celsius, then we have here that the Celsius temperature will be equal to 5/9 times, notice how we have these parentheses here, very important, the Fahrenheit temperature minus 32. Okay, so again, take a screenshot or a photo of this, and we are going to just do like 3 examples of questions that you may see with these conversions. All right, so let's convert 100 degrees Fahrenheit to Celsius. So I'm going from Fahrenheit to Celsius. So the formula that I'm going to use for this question is that Celsius will equal 5/9 times, in parentheses, the Fahrenheit temperature minus 32. Okay, so let's plug in what we know. 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So 5/9 times 100 minus 32. So in order to solve this, it's really important that we do it in the right order. Okay, so order of operations, maybe you remember that from a previous video or previous lesson. That's just the order in which we have to solve algebraic equations and expressions in order to get the right value. So you may have remembered that as PEMDAS. Okay, order of operations just tells me what to do first. I'm always going to do those parentheses first. So let's simplify 100 minus 32 to start. So 100 minus 32 would be 68. Now I have to figure out how to multiply that by 5/9. Well, to multiply a fraction times a whole number, we can always just put the whole number over 1. And then multiplying fractions, you just multiply across the top and across the bottom. Okay, so 5 times 68 would give me 340. Over 9 times 1 is just 9. Okay, so that's how I would solve this. Another thing you could do is if you just wanted to really focus on using your calculator to do this, you could first do 5 divided by 9 and convert this into a decimal. It is a repeating decimal, so you have to be careful because you might just have like a rounding, thing. It's actually just 0.5 repeating. Okay, so you might want to round that to 0.6 or something like that, and then you could multiply this by 68. You could totally do that as well. Okay, but I'm going to just do the fraction because then all I have to do here is just 340 divided by 9. Okay, so 340 divided by 9 gives me 37.7 repeating, which it looks like, looking at my answers, I can just round to the nearest whole temperature, which would be 38 degrees. Okay, if I had turned it into a decimal, 0.5 repeating, maybe I'd use 0.6 times 68. Let's see what happens if we do that. 0.6 times 68 gives me 40.8. So that would be, see, notice how that's rounding and my answer is a lot farther away. I mean, it's still 38 is still definitely the most reasonable answer. But you just have to be careful when it comes to rounding if you are going to turn your fractions into decimals like that. Okay, let's try another one. 12 degrees Celsius is what temperature in Fahrenheit? So I have Celsius and I need to convert that to Fahrenheit. So I'm going to use my Fahrenheit formula. Fahrenheit equals 9/5 times the temperature in Celsius plus 32. So plugging in what I know, 9/5 times 12 plus 32. Okay, again, I need to do this in the proper order. So I need to do multiplication first. So multiplying my fractions. I'm going to just do the multiplication with fractions. I don't really like the decimal strategy because, again, it's just rounding errors and you don't know how close the answer options are going to be. You really don't want to get thrown off by a rounding error and get the answer wrong. Okay, so I'm just going to do 9 times 12 on the top, okay, which is 108, and then 5 times 1 on the bottom is 5. So 108 over 5 plus 32. From here, I can just plug in my calculator. 108 divided by 5, I get 21.6. That's a nice easy decimal to work with. When I add 32 to it, I'm going to get 53.6, and to the nearest degree, that would be 54 degrees. Okay, so let's try one on your own. I'll just write out the formula for you, and then you can wrap up our session with just a little bit of practice on your own. So we have, I'll put down, we could just call these A, B, C, and D, or you could write the number if you want. What temperature is 75 degrees Fahrenheit on the Celsius scale? So we're going from Fahrenheit to Celsius. So we are going to use the Celsius formula, 5/9 times Fahrenheit minus 32. So let me give you like a 30-second head start, and then we will check in on our answer. So just like I was saying with the conversions, I find that if I'm using a formula, it's very important for me to write the formula down and then just plug into it. So I'm not trying to keep it all in my head. and I just find that it's easier to plug in once I have it written down. So I am going to plug in what I know here. So Fahrenheit is 75. Okay, and doing order of operations, I have to use, I have to do the parentheses first. So 75 minus 32 is 43. So now I just have to multiply 5/9 times 43. So 5 times 43 is 215. 9 times 1 is 9. And when I divide this and then round to the nearest whole degree, I will get 24 degrees Celsius. Cool. So if you got that, awesome job. If not, just practice using these formulas. Check out some of the other videos that we have on using conversions and formulas going forward. So I hope you found this video helpful. A lot of practice problems, a lot, unfortunately, of things to memorize, but you can do it. You just need to come up with a strategy, a study strategy that'll help you. And again, the more exposures you have, the easier it is to memorize. So looking at flashcards, writing down conversions, writing down formulas, doing practice questions, all of those are great ways to prepare for your exam. So feel free to drop any feedback or questions or comments you have in the chat, and we will try to address those in future videos going forward. Have a great night and happy studying.